Hi everybody, Meredith Clark here with Region 10, and I'm excited to present today a short video about language performance and how to evaluate it. All right, let's get started. Here's my contact information. If you need to contact me or have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. And after watching this video, you'll be able to answer the questions: what is language performance and how is it different from traditional demonstrations of learning? And how do I evaluate student language performance? Okay, let's dig into that first question. What is language performance? Quite simply put, language performance is when students perform the TEKS. No mystery here, folks, right? We have 3 strands in our TEKS. You'll see the first strand here on this little screenshot that I've taken is interpersonal communication. The other 2 strands are interpretive and presentational communication. All right, so when students do the student expectations, those are the letters A, B, C, D, E that you see in the columns. When they do those things, are showing they are performing language and demonstrating that they can do the TEKS. Now, you'll notice that there is a box above the column. I also have something underlined in orange there. That's the knowledge and skills statement, okay? So basically, the student needs to perform the SE, which is the A, B, C, D, E, F, right? Plus the knowledge and skill statement. So if we take a look at it, and this is a level 1 example, which is that first column on the left. If we look at student expectation A, it says that the student is expected to ask and respond to questions about everyday life in spoken and written language. Okay? Now, I need to add to that something from the knowledge and skills statement. The student uses a mixture of words and phrases and some simple sentences to ask and respond to questions about everyday life in spoken and written language. Now, if kids can do that, if they can perform that, then I know that they're performing at the novice mid to novice high level, and I know if we're meeting our desired results for the course. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, not rocket science at all. Okay, so that's language performance. Now, how is language performance different? And you might be asking, like, well, like, I already do this, right? The kids talk in class, they write in class, they listen in class. But language performance is different from traditional reading, writing, speaking, and listening practice, okay? So let's take a closer look at this. Language performance is when students communicate doing the SEs and the knowledge and skills statement in the TEKS. Okay, so there's examples there. That's student-to-student conversation. That's not speaking practice. They're different, okay? Writing with the real audience in mind. So writing a post to describe where you want to go or where you went or what your favorite fashion trend is versus writing 5 sentences using this verb, right? So writing with a real audience in mind. That's presentational communication. Reading and listening to authentic texts to build literacy skills, that's interpretive communication. All of these things in the left column are aligned to the TEKS. That's language performance. Now, in a traditional world language learning setting, students probably filled in a paper and pencil test to prove that they knew vocabulary words and that they could manipulate language forms or structures like verb tenses, endings of adjectives, adjective word order, these types of things, okay? That's traditional learning. With traditional learning, people learn a lot about the language, but they don't learn to communicate. So that's why our TEKS changed, and that's why you'll see on your World Languages unit a language performance assessment at the end of the unit instead of a traditional pen and paper test. Okay, so they are different, but that's okay. We can do different, right? Different is actually better because it teaches people to communicate. Okay, now here's an example of a performance assessment. This is level 1, mode 3, presentational communication, student expectation B, and the student is expected to perform at the novice mid to novice high level. Now, if you read the prompt on the screen, You see that there is a purpose for communication. We're making videos so that other kids in the class can view them and we can learn about each other. Okay, we are doing the student expectation B, which is describe. Okay, and we are using memorized words and phrases. So this performance assessment is 100% aligned to the TEKS. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to ask you to pause the video so you can hear this student's language performance, and you can type in that bit link to access the video. Capitalization does matter. It's bit.ly/capital L, lowercase EVEL, the number 1, and the word presentational. Okay, so pause the video, look up this sample on YouTube, and just take a listen to it. See if what the student is doing is matching the prompt. Great. All right, so that was an example of a student language performance. Now, if we look at a traditional demonstration of learning, then we see that, as mentioned before, students are probably going to fill in a paper pencil test, maybe multiple choice, fill in the blank, to show that they have vocabulary retention and that they can manipulate certain language forms, okay? So, in which of the two examples is the student actually learning to communicate? The first one with language performance. And that's what we want to go for. Okay? So how do we evaluate language performance? You might be thinking, oh, great, Dr. Clark. Yeah, okay, the kid's going to make a video. How do I grade that? How do I evaluate it? All right, let's answer this question together. Okay? All language performance in the United States is evaluated against 7 domains. And these domains are outlined in the performance descriptors by ACTFL, which is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. The domains are function, context and content, text type, language control, vocabulary, communication strategies, and cultural awareness. Okay, now there's a bit link there on the screen for you if you need that to go ahead and read this document and explore it. I highly recommend it if you're not familiar with the 7 domains. But since this is a short intro video, I'm going to move on. So basically, if you go and you want to get your language proficiency tested, you're going to have an oral proficiency interview, and they are going to evaluate or grade how well you speak a language based on these 7 categories or these 7 domains. And here's the really cool part. These domains are embedded in our TEKS. So our TEKS are resting on a foundation of research and very specific criteria. If you look at section 5 of the TEKS, you'll see that I have some things underlined here in orange. You'll see highly predictable context. Ooh, that's a language domain. You'll see use of memorized words and recalled words and phrases. That's text type, okay? Cognates, borrowed words, high frequency, high contextualized words. That's vocabulary. It could also be text type because we're talking about words and phrases still. Novice mid students may be difficult to understand by the most sympathetic listeners. That's you, that's teachers. This is talking about language control or accuracy. Now I don't have the rest of the screenshot filled out here or underlined where all the domains are, but if you were to take a highlighter and have your domains on the left and your TEKS on the right and go through and highlight every place in the TEKS where you see a domain, almost the whole sheet would be highlighted, okay? Here's another example. If we look at interpersonal communication, we see very clearly in that knowledge and skill statement, we see variety of contexts. That's a domain, right? We see mixture of words and phrases. That's a domain. And then all of the student expectations, ask and respond, express and exchange, ask and tell others, articulate requests. Okay, those are all language functions because they're verbs, they're what kids can do with the language. And student expectations E and F are about cultural awareness. All right, so our TEKS have these language criteria built in them, these performance domains, okay? Which is great because it helps us evaluate student language performance. So if we go back and we think about the sample that you viewed earlier, then we know that the language function is describing who you are and what you like, and the text type is using memorized words, phrases, and simple sentences. So because I've written my prompt from the TEKS, I can evaluate pretty easily these 7 domains because the TEKS are built on the domains. So let's say we look at the first student here, Macy, and I've broken down the components of my prompt, and I have to ask myself as a teacher, can she describe who she is? Yes, okay. Can she describe what she likes to do? Yes, she can. Can she use memorized words and phrases? Yes. Is she using simple sentences? This is debatable here. Most of the language that the student is using is kind of frozen, memorized language. So I wouldn't say that she's creating her own simple sentences at this point. Most of it is memorized language, so I'm not going to say that she's using simple sentences. She's really still at level 1. So based on this, I know that Macy can complete the components of the prompt, and she's performing within that novice mid to novice high range, okay? Which is exactly where she should be for level 1. So that's how I can evaluate student language performance. I'm going to take that TEKS aligned prompt, break the components apart, and see if kids can do each component, okay? Now, once I get my whole class set graded, I should be able to see very clearly the data on what components of the prompt the kids can and can't do very well. Okay, so let's come back together here. Why do we need to know this? Why is this important? Well, it's important because if you're implementing a thematic unit, your unit goals and evidence are different from your traditional unit. In your traditional unit, you were just trying to cover vocabulary and grammar, right? But in a thematic unit, you're trying to get kids to develop language at a certain proficiency level by performing the TEKS, which are these 3 communicative modes. That's the acceptable evidence, right? So if I don't know what a language performance assessment is or what a prompt looks like, and I don't know how to evaluate language performance, then what's probably going to happen when I see that thematic unit? I'm probably going to plan like a traditional unit, okay? And that is going to be an exercise in frustration, I will say, right? Okay, so if I look at my thematic unit and I say, oh, okay, by the end of the unit, they're supposed to have a conversation with each other and ask and respond to questions about who they are and what they do for fun. If I try to teach my whole unit with vocabulary and grammar practice, kids are not going to be able to have a conversation by the end of the unit, okay? So me being able to understand what a performance assessment looks like, what the students will be producing is absolutely key. And if I try to teach a thematic unit like a traditional unit, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, okay? So what are the success criteria? When we're talking about performance assessments, everybody needs to know what a performance assessment is, that it's a direct measure of how well students perform language in the 3 modes, and that kids have to do the SEs and the TEKS. Okay, everybody needs to know that. If you're doing any kind of assessment where you're not asking kids to do the SEs and the TEKS, you need to think again, okay? All right, now, what does everybody need to do? Teachers, we got to plan that thematic unit so that kids will be successful performing the TEKS, not on the vocabulary quiz, not on the grammar test. They've got to perform the TEKS. And teachers, once kids perform the TEKS, you've got to evaluate their language performance against the domains or the TEKS components there, okay? Campus principals and central staff, you want to ensure that teachers are planning for students to perform the TEKS, help teachers identify when they are asking students to do things that aren't the TEKS, because sometimes we forget, we don't know. Okay. And also, principals and central staff, let's connect teachers to the support they need to help them teach these thematic units. Okay. As always, Region 10 is here to help. Okay. Keep learning with us. You can find more information on our website. And thank you so much for being here today. I hope this has uncomplicated a part of your life. I hope you feel more knowledgeable and just ready to go out there and really move the needle on student language proficiency. Okay, we want to make more multilingual people in Texas, and we can do it. Okay, so take care. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.